Here are the top stories for today, June 9, 2021. Bouncing back, the government assures it spares no effort in generating more jobs as the country recorded 4.14 million jobless Filipinos in April. Vaccination figures on the rise. The country has so far administered 6 million COVID-19 vaccines as it targets to inoculate more Filipinos as a steady supply of jabs continues to pour in. Punish perpetrators. Malacanang deplores the use of anti-personnel mines by communist terrorists, saying this is a violation of the international humanitarian law. And ready for a one-of-a-kind food trip? The Tourism Department partners with video making and sharing app TikTok to promote Filipino cuisine. Good day, I am William Theo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. Measures are in place to address the unemployment rate in the country. Malacanang said the government's three-pronged strategy would help create more job opportunities for unemployed Filipinos. Presidential spokesperson Secretary Harry Roque said the rise in the number of unemployed Filipinos came no longer a surprise since stricter quarantine restrictions had been imposed in the past months due to the rising number of COVID-19 infections. In April this year, the country recorded around 4.14 million jobless Filipinos, higher than the 3.44 million registered in March. Metro Manila reported the highest unemployment rate for April, which stood at 14.4% or 875 jobless Filipinos.
Strategiya naman po natin, una is tangkain na i-control nga ang disease neto para lalo tayo makapagbukas ng ekonomiya. Pangalawa, patuloy pa rin po yung paggagamit natin ng fiscal at monetary policies na umaabot hanggang 2.7 trillion po ang ating binibigay na subsidiya. No? At pangatlo po, yung pinabibilis nga po natin ang pagbabakuna.
Meanwhile, the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration, or POEA, offers 15,000 job opportunities abroad, including factory workers, construction workers, waiters, cleaners, among others. The job fair will be launched on June 12 on Independence Day. Those interested may visit their website. The Philippines has already administered 6 million COVID-19 vaccine shots nationwide. Vaccine czar Carlito Galvez Jr. said, despite the reduced output due to lack of vaccine supply, the Philippines is expected to gain further momentum with the arrival of more vaccines. Galvez said as of June 7, the government has already administered more than 6 million jabs to A1, A2, A3, and A4 priority groups. Out of this number, more than 1.5 million have been fully vaccinated or have received 2 doses. Galvez said this shows that the vaccination sites being run by the local government units are capable of vaccinating at an accelerated rate if they are provided with sufficient vaccine supplies. The government is expecting the arrival of more than 11 million doses of Sinovac, Sputnik V, Moderna, Pfizer, and AstraZeneca within the month. Meanwhile, the younger population may also get vaccinated against COVID-19 soon. This as the Food and Drug Administration approved the Emergency Use Authorization, or EUA, for Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccines for individuals aged 12 to 15 years old. The Department of Health welcomes the approval of more vaccines for children and adolescents. However, it says vaccination for the priority group will remain. Malacanang earlier said it will consider vaccinating teenagers once there is a steady supply of Pfizer jabs. President Rodrigo Duterte is set to receive his second dose of Sinopharm COVID-19 vaccine. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said the president's second dose would come from the donated Sinopharm vaccines. The World Health Organization gave the green light to China's Sinopharm vaccine last month, making it the 6th vaccine to receive WHO validation for safety, efficacy, and quality. President Duterte received the first Sinopharm vaccine jab on May 3. At the time, Sinopharm has yet to secure an emergency use authorization from the FDA.
Ang pagkakaintindi ko po, yung EUA was granted for the 1,000 donated. Kasi specific po yung EUA na it was for the donated Sinopharm. So kung mag-aangkat pa po ng mas marami, I think a separate EUA will have to be given to the entity na mag-i-import po niyan.
Malacanang said it is unfair to compare Davao City with Quezon City in terms of the COVID-19 case count. This after the Octa Research Group said Davao City is forecast to surpass Quezon City with the highest number of new COVID-19 cases. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said the rise in coronavirus infections in the two cities should not be compared because they have been placed under different community quarantine classifications.
Kaya po siguro bumaba ang kaso sa Quezon City dahil nag-ECQ nga at nag-MECQ na hindi naman po nangyari sa Davao. Pero pangalawa po, ang Davao po is actually, kumbaga, the place where many people from the Davao region seek medical assistance. No? So, hindi rin po maaalis yung katotohanan na dahil lang Southern Philippine Medical Center caters to everyone in Southern Philippines, yung mga datos ng mga COVID-19 cases include cases from the neighboring areas in Southern Philippines.
6 barangay officials have been charged due to the occurrence of recent super spreader events in their areas. These events include the Gubat sa Ciudad Resort in Barangay 171 in Caloocan City, recreational resort and pool operations in San Jose, Navotas City, boxing matches in Barangay 181 and 182 in Gagalangin, Tondo, Manila, and the overcrowding incidents at the Bacas River in Barangay Matiktik, Norzagaray, Bulacan, Barangay Balabag in Boracay Island, Barangay Sambiray in Malay, Aklan, and the Club Holik Bar and Restaurant in Barangay Camputhao, Cebu. Anyo said he is also waiting for the report of Quezon City LGU regarding the food distribution of Councilor Franz Pumare.
Magtatalaga ng sapat na holding area para sa mga violators upang maiwasan ang hawahan. Sundin ang rules of criminal procedure sa mga warrantless arrest at uusigin ang LGU at barangay officials na hindi magpapatupad ng mga kautusan ng batas.
Negros Occidental, Zamboanga City, and Davao City have received another shipment of COVID-19 vaccines. This as the government ramps up on the vaccination drive in the country. The details from Marita Mawahe.
In Negros Occidental, some 23,800 vials of Sinovac jabs arrived at the Bacolod Silay Airport yesterday morning. Of the shipment, 7,000 vials are for Bacolod City and 16,800 vials are for the other towns and cities of the province. The allocation for Negros Occidental is being stored at the Provincial Health Office, a cold room, before the distribution. In Zamboanga, about 30,400 doses of the Sinovac vaccine also arrived yesterday. DOH Assistant Regional Director Dr. Augusto Manolo Alpici said it is intended for the remaining eligible population who fall under the A1, A2, and A3 priority groups. Alpici said they have already received a total of 290,900 doses of vaccines from the DOH Central Office since March 5. Davao City, meanwhile, received 44,800 doses of Sinovac vaccines yesterday. The jobs are intended for the A1, A2, and A3 groups. Overall, the Davao region had already received 432,050 doses from the national government. Bulacan, meanwhile, reported that almost 182,000 received the COVID-19 jobs. Out of the number, more than 145,000 received their first dose, while almost 37,000 received their second dose. The vaccinated Bulaqueños came from the priority groups who have received at least one dose of the AstraZeneca or Sinovac vaccines. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Marita Muahe.
Still to come, a local chief executive shares the president's sentiment, saying people as if there is no pandemic. And the POEA plans to seek more exemptions to the deployment cap on health workers. Details ahead. This is the PNA Newsroom. The COVID-19 pandemic has greatly changed our lives for the worse. Lives and jobs were lost and economies reached a meltdown. Thanks to the arrival of safe and effective vaccines, we are one step closer to normalcy. It's time to do our part, get vaccinated for our safety and for our recovery.
If you are there in that community, go there and have yourself vaccinated by any of the vaccines available. They are all potent, they are all effective.
I would like to appeal to all our kababayans, please get vaccinated against COVID-19 and be the government partner in preventing further spread of the disease. I encourage you to get vaccinated as soon as possible time. These vaccines are safe and they are the key to reopening our society. The need for international solidarity and cooperation cannot be made clearer than this pandemic because everyone is safe. No one is safe globally until everybody is safe.
Vaccines work. The 22 Filipino fishermen of the FB Gemver vessel will soon receive their compensation 2 years after they are figured in an incident near the Recto Bank. These fishermen were abandoned in open seas after their vessel was rammed by a Chinese trawler in 2019. The Department of Justice, or DOJ, said Chinese officials agreed on a formal counter-proposal from the Chinese side. DOJ Undersecretary Adrian Sugay said the claim of the owner and crew members of the FB Gemver 1 is less than 19 million pesos and that among the issues to be taken up in the negotiations is whether or not both parties can still sue each other after the payment. Meanwhile, Filipino fisherfolk can now continue their activities in the West Philippine Sea with the increased presence of the Department of Agriculture, Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, or BFAR, and the Philippine Coast Guard. DABFAR currently has 5 monitoring, control and surveillance vessels and 1 multi-mission offshore vessel at the Kalayaan Island Group. It also has 1 MCS vessel at the Bajo de Masinloc to provide assistance and protection. The Office of the Presidential Advisor on the Peace Process, or OPAP, has turned over a concrete road to 3 barangays in Gingoog City that are expected to benefit from the newly gained access to government services. Vincent Bautista has this story.
The communities of 3 conflict-affected barangays in Gingoog City happily welcomed the official turnover of a 5.2-kilometer peace road from the Office of the Presidential Advisor on the Peace Process, or OPAP. Under OPAP's Payapa at Masaganang Pamayanan, or PAMANA program, the 73 million concrete road connects to 3 isolated priority barangays, namely Kalipay, Sangalan, and Eureka, to make government services more accessible to the residents there.
Sa una, isa ka oras kapin ang biyahe paingon sa kanang dakbayan sa Hingog, pero karon tunga oras na lang. Unya mga emergency sa una na kamatay nga pasyente sa dalang. Ang uban kamatay na lang sa balay kay dili mahatod ngadto sa ospital.
In line with President Rodrigo Roa Duterte's goal of achieving lasting peace against local armed communist conflict, the Peace Road of Barangays Kalipay, Sangalan, and Eureka serves as an instrument for the livelihood and economic development of its citizens by giving access to government services and support.
PAMANA aim sana to address yung peace and conflict issues, no, sa mga barangay, sa mga communities na hard to reach and conflict affected area. It also aims to support yung barangay governance by capacitating them on conflict sensitive and post-promoting tools, no.
For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Vincent Bautista, Philippine Information Agency, Northern Mindanao.
Youth leaders in Marawi City and nearby areas gathered to present recommendations on policies to promote peace building, security, and youth empowerment. More on this from Claire Gighe.
The Office of the Presidential Advisor on the Peace Process, or OPAP, through its Social Healing and Peace Building, or SHAPE department, convened 56 youths in this city and nearby municipalities in Llano del Sur to gather recommendations in crafting the Regional Plan on Youth, Peace and Security, or RPYPS. The activity is anchored on United Nations Security Council Resolution 2250, recognizing the efforts of the youth in peace building.
Ang aim talaga or objective ng programang ito ay makuha yung suporta at participation ng ating mga kabataan para tulungan kami at kunin ang kanilang mga idea at recommendation para sa pagbuo ng isang Youth, Peace and Security National Action Plan.
Rodolfo also emphasized that the RPYPS is centered on participation, partnerships, prevention, protection, and disengagement and reintegration as 5 pillars for action related to young people's contribution to peace processes and conflict resolution.
Dito umiikot, nakasentro ang usapin ng youth, peace, and security. So ang ina-aim talaga natin ay mag-participate ang mga kabataan sa 5 pillars. We ensure na well represented talaga yung mga kabataan at gusto namin i-highlight na lahat highly participatory.
Another workshop on RPYPS will be conducted to reach more youth in Llano del Sur province. For other regions in Visayas and Luzon, RPYPS will be held in a blended modality through face-to-face discussions or video teleconferencing. For PNA Newsroom, Claire Gighe of the Philippine Information Agency, Iligan City Information Center.
A local executive sided with President Rodrigo Duterte as the president warned of stricter measures in Cagayan de Oro City and Bacolod City if COVID-19 cases continue to rise. Cagayan de Oro City Mayor Oscar Moreno said the president's warning should serve as a somber reminder to the people to religiously comply with minimum public health standards. Moreno said the president's observation that there are people who were acting as if there was no pandemic was correct, which is why there is a surge of COVID-19 cases in the city. After cases hit 50 in May, Moreno enforced a curfew from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. the following day and prohibited the sale of liquor during curfew hours. Restrictions were also enforced on the attendance of wakes and funerals. Moreno said once the Northern Mindanao Medical Center and the city's hospitals are overwhelmed by the surge of cases, then they will enforce enhanced community quarantine, which will make everyone suffer. The Philippine Overseas Employment Administration will recommend to the national government additional exemptions to the existing overseas deployment cap on healthcare workers. This is on top of a proposal to increase the 5,000 cap on deployments. POEA Chief Bernard Olalia said they have a recommendation to the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases on the deployment cap. The country temporarily suspended the deployment of healthcare workers abroad after the 5,000 deployment cap was reached on June 1st. Currently, the deployment of nurses to the United Kingdom is allowed after the government granted its request to be exempted from the deployment limit. Germany is also requesting an exemption from the measure, but this has yet to be acted upon by the government. Also exempted from the deployment are those covered by a government-to-government hiring process. The deployment cap was implemented to ensure that the country has a sufficient number of healthcare workers amid the pandemic. Up next, starting a new life, over 400 former rebels and supporters undergo skills training. And the DOT and TikTok add flavor to Filipino cuisine. We tell you later how this is possible. Back after a quick break, stay with the PNA Newsroom. You're still watching the PNA Newsroom. Malacanang slammed the continued use of anti-personnel mines by the new People's Army following the landmine blast that killed a football varsity player in Masbate. Presidential spokesperson Secretary Harry Roque said the use of anti-personnel landmines is an international crime and the NPA must be punished for it. Roque said the use of landmines is prohibited, citing the Ottawa Treaty or the 1997 Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention. The Philippines is one of the signatory states to the convention, which prohibits the production, stockpiling, transfer, and use of APMS. Two people, including Far Eastern University football player Keith Absalon, were killed while a minor was wounded after a landmine believed to have been planted by NPA guerrillas exploded in Barangay Anas, Masbate City. Communist terrorists also torched a globe cell tower on the same day and rigged a landmine in Barangay Humapon, Legazpi City, Albay. The landmine wounded 4 civilians aboard a passing tricycle. Over 400 former rebels and supporters in Western Visayas are now taking up training programs with the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, or TESDA. TESDA Region 6 said once barangays are considered clear from the influence of communist terrorist groups, they provide training, intervention for the former rebels and supporters for their livelihood. Among the skills they can learn are competencies in steel fabrication, organic agriculture, carpentry, grains production, and electrical installation and maintenance. TESDA said they decided to start with a training on bulldozer use following plans to open up an access road in Negros Occidental. Once it is completed, they will introduce other training programs as well as livelihood and construction-related programs so they can build their own houses. TESDA said the directive of Secretary Isidro La Peña is to implement the whole-of-nation approach and not just for one training intervention. President Rodrigo Duterte on Tuesday praised outgoing Philippine Navy Chief Vice Admiral Giovanni Carlo Bacordo for his valiant and dedicated service during his stint as head of the Naval Force. In a taped message during the Philippine Navy's change of command rights, Duterte hailed Bacordo's efforts to serve and protect the country. Duterte acknowledged Bacordo's contributions to the modernization of the Philippine Navy. He also expressed hope that Bacordo would enjoy continued success after his military service. Bacordo, a member of the Philippine Military Academy class of 1987, was picked by Duterte to lead the Philippine Navy in February last year. He reached the mandatory retirement age of 56 on Wednesday. He was replaced by Rear Admiral Adelius Bordado, whom he described as capable of bringing the Navy forward to modern platforms, modern systems, and modern mindsets. Meanwhile, for his part, Bordado pledged to continue all the programs and projects initiated by his predecessor to sustain the development of the Navy. Bordado said continuity and change will represent the direction of his leadership. He said he will focus on education and training to boost the Navy's manpower and physical competence. Bordado, who hails from Camarines Sur, graduated number 4 in the PMA class of 1988. His previous key positions include being the Chief of Naval Staff and Commander of the Armed Forces of the Philippines Education, Training and Doctrine Command, Naval Installation Command, Naval Forces Southern Luzon, and Sealift Amphibious Force of the Philippine Fleet. Authorities confirmed that they are pursuing several persons of interest that could shed light on the June 3 bus torching in Barangay Bialong, Emlang, North Cotabato. Emlang Police Chief Major Realan Mamon said they have ample evidence and testimonies from witnesses but refused to divulge further details pending follow-up operations. Mamon said police have traced extortion as the primary motive of the incident, with a certain group being linked to the incident. North Cotabato Governor Nancy Catamco and Emlang Mayor Russell Abonado earlier offered a 100,000 pesos reward to anyone who can lead authorities to the whereabouts of the arsonists. The incident along Barangay Bialong claimed the lives of 3 bus passengers and injured 6 others. In sports, Japan is planning to vaccinate all volunteers working for the Tokyo Olympics set to begin in mid-July. About 70,000 volunteers have registered for the world's biggest games, which were delayed last year until this summer due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Tamayo Marukawa, Japan's Olympic minister, told Parliament that this is to improve the safety of this summer's Olympics and Paralympics amid the coronavirus pandemic. Japan began vaccinations for its athletes on June 1st. Meanwhile, the U.S. pharmaceutical giant Pfizer is providing vaccines for free to delegations participating in the Tokyo Games. Media personnel covering the Tokyo Olympics will also be monitored to avoid violation of the COVID-19 protocols. The Department of Tourism and social media app TikTok introduced their newest campaign, #Sarap Maging Pinoy, to encourage locals to celebrate Filipino pride by sharing and promoting local cuisines. The campaign has been received positively by TikTok users, garnering more than 35 million views since it was launched on June 1. Under the Sarap Maging Pinoy campaign, content creators were tapped to share clips of homemade recipes and dishes on TikTok. Some videos even featured home cooks preparing the dishes amid the scenic destinations where these recipes were made popular. Users can still take part in the Sarap Maging Pinoy campaign until June 15 by posting recipe videos that feature the best dishes from their cities. Here's another look at today's biggest stories. Bouncing back, the government assures it spares no effort in generating more jobs as the country recorded 4.14 million jobless Filipinos in April. Vaccination figures on the rise. The country has so far administered 6 million COVID-19 vaccines as it targets to inoculate more Filipinos as a steady supply of jabs continues to pour in. Punish perpetrators, Malacanang deplores the use of anti-personnel mines by communist terrorists, saying this is a violation of the international humanitarian law. And ready for a one-of-a-kind food trip? The Tourism Department partners with video making and sharing app TikTok to promote Filipino cuisine. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. To check more news content, visit our webpage or head on to the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC 13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know. From the PNA Newsroom, we tell stories that inspire change. I am William Theo. Good day, stay safe everyone.